Alright, so we're going to continue on with the Blazer front end here. Today we're going to do the wheel bearing hub assembly. It's got the ABS sensor on there as well. Now this video is somewhat specific to GM four-wheel drive vehicles. Unlike the last couple videos I did, and I can link to those at the end, the tie rod ends, the stabilizer link, how to line it up with string. That's all going to be at the end if you want to check those out. But this one here, we're just going to replace the wheel bearing hub assembly. Now keep in mind that there is some benefit to changing all these things out all at once. But I'm doing individual videos to sort of help people who are looking for specific repairs. But if you're doing your ball joints and your hubs and everything, you might as well do it all at once, okay? Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut to a clip of my Blazer. I changed the hubs out on mine not too long ago. And you'll be able to see the play in the wheel bearing. I didn't let my wife's get quite that bad before it's time to change it out, okay? So let's go ahead and I'll show you that. I'm going to get my tools together and we'll get started here. Alright, so I have the vehicle up off the ground and supported safely. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the top and the bottom of the tire here and try to wiggle it. I'm just going like this with it, and I can actually feel motion, and maybe if I shut up here for a second you can hear it. Okay, so I really probably should have changed this. I heard the bearing noise, the ABS light's been on, and ABS was kicking on until I unplugged it. I probably should have changed this a little sooner, but I will change no bearing before it's time. So now it's time. Okay. Okay, if you don't have an impact wrench available to bust this hub nut loose, you might as well leave the vehicle right on the ground and try to pull the center cap off. Otherwise, you're going to have to jack the vehicle up and get the center cap out and then drop it back down, which, you know, it's not overly difficult, but we might as well try to save a little bit of time here. A small screwdriver would work. I'm using one of these little pick tools. Alright, so now you need a 35 millimeter. In my previous video I used a 36, which worked also, but it was a little bit of slop. Let me grab that real quick. Alright, so you can pick these sockets up. You know, they're like 15, 17 bucks on Amazon. Definitely worth it. Again, the money you save by doing the job yourself is going to basically pay for the tools that you need. So, alright, what I've got here is I've just got a sort of a doubled up pipe, added leverage, make sure it's on there good, and we're going like this, right? So you want to probably put it in the position where you can put down on it. I've even stepped on them before just to bust them loose. Let's see how bad this one is. Okay. I don't know if you saw, but I did end up stepping on it. Okay, now we're going to jack the vehicle up and get the wheel off. Alright, so what I like to do when removing the caliper bolts is turn the wheel to the opposite side from what you're working on. That just allows you to have greater access to these caliper bolts. We're not talking about the pin bolts here. Let me get a close-up of the bolts we need to remove. These are 18 millimeter, by the way. Alright, for this top caliper bolt right here, it's an 18 millimeter, and I'm going to use a wobble extension. It may not be necessary, but it just gives you a little bit of play. Not really like a universal, but I don't know if you can see that. It gives a little bit of play, so we can definitely clear this upper control arm with the wobble extension. See if we can bust this loose here. Okay, now I'm not going to back it out too far because I won't get my socket off. Okay, and now that it's loose, you can just use an open end wrench or your fingers. Okay, so this is the lower one. This is the caliper pin bolt, so we don't want to touch that yet. We're just going to bust that one loose right there. And again, it's an 18 millimeter. Okay, so with the caliper bolts removed, I'm going to straighten out the wheel real quick. Alright, so I'm just going to place a jack stand in here so when we get the caliper off I have something to set it on so we're not just hanging off the brake hose. Now we need to pry this caliper off. Now even though the brakes are not on, the piston has relaxed, but you may have developed a ridge on your rotor, and this one does, and that's why we're replacing it. So what you need to do is pry this off. Okay, so we'll just set this on the jack stand here. kind of get it out of the way, but supported. Okay. Remove the rotor here. Incidentally, too, because this is my wife's vehicle, I'm doing the rotors and the brake pads, a new dust shield. Now's the time to do it because it all needs to come off, right? Okay. All right, let's remove the hub. Okay, I'm going to remove the hub nut here. All right, I'm just going to point these out to you because you're not going to be able to see them. Right there. Right there. And on the other side, right there. Okay, 18 millimeter. And I'm going to use a combination wrench as well as a socket with a short extension. Alright, so it's pretty slow going with these bolts because you don't have a lot of access to them. Once you break them loose, it's just a matter of taking your time, getting them out. Now, I'm not going to remove these all the way. I want to show you a way to remove this hub assembly if you don't have an impact hammer. So what I'm going to do is back them out, maybe you know, a quarter of an inch, half an inch, just enough so that we've got some room to hit on them, and see if we can force this hub out. Another quick trick I want to show you, and I think I showed it in my last you know, ball joint video, but basically you can take 2 wrenches like this, wrap it around like that, and you have more leverage just to break them loose. It's not fun to work with them that way, but these are in there pretty well, and the reason being there's the threads protrude out, and I did spray them down, and there's a good amount of rust on them. So basically you're trying to force those threads back through the hub. So what I've got here, I've got 2 wrenches hooked together. I usually take my other hand and put it on like this, and it just gives you more leverage. So it's kind of the equivalent of putting the pipe on the ratchet like I do. Okay, let me back these out quite a ways, and then we'll take a look at what you need to do if you don't have an impact hammer. Now, I'm probably going to cheat and use my impact hammer. You'll also notice I have greater access to this hub because there's no dust shield, right? So now's the time to replace that as well. Okay, once you get them broken loose, you can use a socket on most of them, or 2 of them, I believe. Anyways, now I'm just using an extension, a short extension to get by the CV joint. That's the extension I'm using there. The socket's still in on it. Okay, now let's take a quick look at the bolts, how much I have them out. Okay, so if you don't have an impact hammer, which I am going to use on mine, you want to only bring the bolts out enough so that you can actually hit on them with a hammer, because what you're ultimately trying to do is split this apart here. So once you create a little gap, you could then use a chisel. So I'm actually going to remove these bolts all the way. Okay, so here's the deal. If you're replacing the bearing assembly, the whole hub, it's safe to hit on this outer portion. If you're actually planning to reuse this hub assembly, then I would hit on the bolts like I discussed a few minutes ago, okay? And the other thing is I've cut the ABS line. Somebody's either replaced this hub or the ABS sensor in the past because they didn't hook up the right brackets, okay? I'm using an air hammer. It's just going to make my job easier. But when I see some separation, I'll show you how you can use a chisel to get it the rest of the way. And of course, I'm wearing hearing protection and safety glasses, all right? This bearing's actually coming apart here. There's our washer. Put that with the nut. Alright, so in this case, the bearing came apart, okay? You can see here that's how the ABS works. I'll do a video on how ABS works here eventually. So that's all free. This piece here should just knock right loose, okay? Now ideally, okay, there we go. Alright, so now I'm just going to take some time and I'm actually going to clean up all around this steering knuckle. where the hub assembly goes, there's a new O-ring that comes with it, and you just want it to slide in easier, and there's some rust and junk in there. So let me clean that all up real quick. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just put a bolt in the top here. Just something to hang my new dust shield on. And now, incidentally, I painted this black, and I'll paint the other side black so they both look new. The other one was fine, it's been replaced, okay? Then, take your hub, make sure that your O-ring is on. You can grease that up if you want, I usually do. Okay. Now, your ABS wire goes through this little cutout here. You might want to feed that through first. And that also tells you which side the hub goes. So it goes this way, so your ABS is right at the window. Or the cutout, rather. Line up your spline and kind of shake it. Make sure your O-ring doesn't fall off or anything. Okay. You're not going to be able to force that O-ring in by hand. So what we're going to do is basically get one threaded by finger tight here. Just get it started. And then I'll get the other two started. And then you're going to work your way around evenly, bringing this side in, then this side in, then this side in. Because if you go one side, you're going to get it cockeyed. It's not going to want to go. And you're also going to screw up your O-ring. Okay? You want to suck that in evenly, and you'll feel it when it goes. Finally, that O-ring will compress, and it'll pull it right in. Okay, let me grab my other bolt here. That's down here. This hub has either been replaced or the ABS sensor has been replaced because whoever did it didn't run the wire correctly. There's a couple of brackets they missed. Keep that in mind as you're watching. Okay, I just shake it. Anytime I'm doing kind of finger tightening, I kind of shake the item or the part, and that helps the threads work their way in. Okay, let me grab some wrenches here, and I'm going to work this in slowly. I may not capture the whole thing. Alright, so you can see I'm making progress here, and the O-ring is just about at the point where it's going to be pulled in. And I don't do turn for turn. You know, when I say I work my way around, I do maybe 10 or 15, you know, turns on the bolt, and then I move on to the top one, then I do the side one. You can see it's pulling in now. It just went by the dust shield. Okay, so it's not necessary to be, you know, entirely accurate when I say work your way around, but it is important to try to pull that in evenly. Okay, I'm going to finish putting that in, and then we're going to run our ABS line here. Alright, so just inspect all the way around the hub, make sure everything's nice and tight. There are no gaps, everything just meets up directly, okay? Incidentally, 77 foot-pounds. I'm not going to torque them down because I have a 1/2-inch torque wrench and it's going to be a pain to get in there. But basically 77 foot-pounds if you want to torque it, alright? Now I mentioned before that this had been replaced, or at least the ABS, because they didn't use all the brackets that normally hold the ABS line. This one happens to be a 10mm, and they did hook that one back up. I believe it comes with the ABS sensor, that's why. Alright, and we'll be doing the ball joints on this here shortly. Okay, put the new one back on. Make sure it's not real tight because you do need a little bit of play for turning the wheel. Yeah, I don't know the torque spec on this one here. Probably tight enough so it doesn't fall off, but don't break it. That's a lot of times my torque spec, but people have been wanting the torque spec, so I've been trying to work on that a little bit. Correct issues I've had with past videos. If you're coming here from my previous ball joint video, which included hub removal, unnecessarily I might add, let me know what you think of this one. Alright, so let's go ahead and unplug this. ABS goes up into here, and they didn't put that back either. Okay, that's supposed to go in a hole right up in here, so we'll see if we can find that with the new one. Alright. Now I can see that they did leave the bracket for this one, so I'm actually gonna use that. So let me grab a 13mm and get that out of there. Okay, so this bracket's pretty well rusted, but I was able to get it off. It just basically bends around the wire. So if you're not going to use the brackets, I would say at least zip tie, you know, the ABS line to various points, just to minimize the vibration, and thus reducing the chance of having some sort of fray in the wire. Okay. Alright, let me pop this back in. This again was a 13mm, and then we'll plug it in, and put the brakes back together, and we'll be done with this side. Alright. Okay, so again, there is supposed to be a bracket here. Whoever changed it previously, maybe it rusted off, who knows. I am going to zip tie this right to that brake hose, or right there. Okay, so I may not show that. I've got to run and get some zip ties. I've got some in the shed, I think. So okay, what we need to do is come up here. Okay, this plugs in. I don't know if you can actually see it or not. Okay, so I'm just going to plug this in. You can see it's obvious there's a little clip that goes over a sort of a notch. Okay, then there's a hole in the frame that this sits down into, and I think I've got that right here. Obviously it wasn't in there before. Oop, I just snapped it. But there's enough to get in there. Okay, just like that. I don't know if you can see it or not, but if, again, you know, if you can't find that, then you might just want to zip tie it. Okay, tuck your wires up in underneath. Alright, let's get the brakes on here real quick. Alright, I'm just going to spray down the new rotor. Ideally, brake parts cleaner is what you want to use. I'm using carburetor cleaner, that's what I have. Another thing people give me shit about on here: you're only supposed to use brake parts cleaner on the brake parts. Well, I'm just using it to remove the oily anti-rust residue that these rotors typically ship with, and carburetor cleaner does that just fine. So that's what we're doing. If you have brake parts cleaner, use brake parts cleaner. Okay, by the time these even touch the pads, that stuff's going to be long gone. Okay, alright, brand new. Alright, so let's take the opportunity to grease up the pins here. I'm going to remove this rotor here. Give myself some room. Okay. So what you want to do is inspect the boots, and you want to grease up the pins. This boot is a little bit compressed, but it doesn't appear to be torn. My guess is it wasn't on all the way. So let me spray down the pins. Yes, with carburetor cleaner. You guys can yell at me. Brake parts cleaner is what you should use. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to get my hand dirty here. Now, all of this obviously wasn't necessary for replacing the hubs, but I wanted to get this all done. The less I work on my wife's car, the better off I am, you know. If it was mine, I'd probably keep driving on it. But this is just going to be sort of preventative, you know. And it just assures that I'm not going to have to rip this thing apart and do her brakes, you know, next month, say. Even though I'm sure they would have lasted easily through the winter, okay? Alright, while I have that off, I'm actually going to take a minute and compress that piston with a C-clamp, and the reason being is because I have, you know, new brake pads, a new rotor. We need to push that back. Alright, so basically, if you've watched any of my other videos, you would see this is how I compress the piston on this caliper. And you can see that they go back easily. Now, some calipers can't be pushed back like this. You need to turn them as well. I ran into it on my 96 Lincoln. Incidentally, I have a new Lincoln, or 89 Lincoln, new to me. The thing is awesome. So I'll be doing some videos on that here shortly. But I want to get through this sort of front end series that I've started. And the ball joints will be next on this, and then I've got a encoder motor to do on mine. So, all right, let's throw this thing back together. But we put it back on the right way. I did drop some grease down inside of the bracket as well. And now what I do is just push it on all the way. You should see the boot will kind of seat. And I don't think one of them was, just the way it was compressed. So that's going to allow your brake caliper to move more freely, which is what you want. Okay, you want it to move like that. You don't want it to be stiff. Okay. All right, let's get the pads in there. All right, 85 foot-pounds on these caliper bolts. For those of you who are keeping score here on the torque specs. Alright, so let's just get the nut and washer on. The nut goes like that, okay? I'm just going to kind of wind it on there. Alright, then what we're going to do is we're going to put the wheel back on and drop it down, and we will torque this one. And that's a mistake I made on my ball joint video where I wound it in, and although it does work, it may actually cause premature bearing failure. This wouldn't be a bearing video without mentioning slop in the bearings, and mine had some serious slop in the bearings. That's a shout out to Herb Taggart. He loves that term or phrase, slop in the bearings, but nobody likes having sloppy bearings. Alright, we're going to put the wheel on here. We're going to torque this thing down and we'll be done. Okay, so for this hub nut I go 104 foot-pounds, okay? And that's something I didn't do on my ball joint video last time, so I'll be making a link to my new ball joint video from that one as well as to this. And I do my lug nuts in a sort of a star pattern, alternating star pattern at 90 pounds, and then I check them again the next day, okay? So hopefully this video has been helpful. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hit that subscribe button right there if you think this has been helpful at all. Give me that thumbs up. I appreciate that. And stay tuned. I'm going to put some links to a couple other videos, tie rod ends, sway bar links. That's all part of the series here. Okay, ball joints are next. Thanks for watching. Have fun.